Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Good evening if you're in Europe. I'm Dr. Michelle Fainensteel, and I'm coming to you this afternoon with Dirigo Food Safety Salt Cured Pig office hours. It's 1 minute before the top of the hour, and I thought I'm trying to get better at doing these things, folks, and get it so that you can log in and we can actually be doing stuff by the actual top of the hour. So we are at 1 minute to go. So come on, join in. If somebody wants to give me a thumbs up that you can hear me, that would be awesome. And we'll get ourselves going in just a few seconds here. So, and it's noon by my clocks. So, welcome. I'm Dr. Michelle Fainensteel. This is the Salt Cured Pig office hours. I am your friendly food safety admin. Though I have to tell you, I also made a really incredible guanciale. So, I am really terribly proud of myself. I posted recipe and pictures a couple weeks ago, but we finally broke into it last night and it was amazing. Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us. So I want to do a couple of things in the office hours. Of course, I'm always here for your questions. We're talking about HACCP Step 1 right now, and I'll launch into that. But I want to let you know that these are open for question and answer, because I don't think it's going to take us all half hour to do it. And oh, hey, Carrie joined us. Yay. Hi, Carrie. And so please ask your questions, whether they're related to the topic at hand or not. And if they need some research, then I will go research and post on the page. So we are, of course, coming to you from Yarmouth, Maine. And I just want to make a point before we really go into this. You know, I'm a veterinarian by training, and I believe in family farms, and I believe that the work that we do is really important. And one of the reasons I'm dedicated to food safety and food safety practices is because I believe we can build really robust regional food systems and create economic revitalization. I'm a veteran. I believe that food security is national security. And I want to point out to people, if you don't know, how important it is to buy your animals and as much food as possible from family farms and farmers that you know. We're in the middle of a rash of suicides, especially on dairy farms. Farming is an incredibly dangerous occupation, and the more we can support local farmers and local foods, the better economies we'll have and the safer we are as a nation. And it really does make a difference. Dairy farmers are getting suicide hotline notes in their insurance documentation and in various USDA communications. And farming's tough. Farming's really, really tough. And buying from local farmers and not using commodity hogs for our production really does make a difference. So anyway, so with that, part of the reason I teach HACCP is because I believe that we honor the animal by doing things correctly. And when we do things correctly, we don't have to throw things out, and we don't waste the time, money, and effort that the farmer put in, the life that the animal gave, and the time, money, and effort that you, the producer, put in. And so that's why I do this, is because that all means something to me, and I hope that it means something to you. So with that, let's start in on HACCP. Okay, so we talk about HACCP a lot here on the Salt Cured Pig page, and how we do things. HACCP is, of course, the way we do food safety planning for USDA regulated foods. There are other foods that we do HACCP for. And here at Dirigo Food Safety, we teach it as a 12-step program. And yes, I do use that language. And so those 12 steps cover from the very beginning of the process to the very end of the process. All right. Now, when I am teaching this, and I have an online HACCP course, which I can link to so that you can get the certification, I teach record keeping first, because record keeping is so important in what we are doing, and everything that you create is a record. So the HACCP plan that you create itself is a record. All right. I'm doing this in stepwise order for Salt Cured Pig office hours because I'm the only person that does records first. I didn't want to confuse anybody. And we will get to records at like week 7 or whatever it is. But for everybody else, for people who are doing Codex HACCP, let me tell you that, or USDA HACCP, that your record keeping starts now. Start keeping track of things on documents that have the name of your facility, the address of your facility, and if you have an inspection number, the inspection number on your facility. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is HACCP Step 1, which is form your food safety team. I cannot overemphasize how important this is. All right, your food safety team is not something that you slap together when you can't figure it out. We start thinking about this from the very beginning. Okay, and the reason is that when we're making decisions about what food we are making, we got to make those decisions in a group of people, or as big a group as we can, that are going to have an effect on the food safety. Okay, and so your HACCP team has to be defined by both person and by job title, and that job title should go into the job description when you're hiring, you know, and people need to be recognized for their efforts on doing food safety. It has to have a primary food safety practitioner or HACCP coordinator or whatever. Okay, and then my recommendation is that it's as broad a group as possible. Now, in a single owner operator business, that's practically impossible, but there is no rule that says your HACCP team must only be employees of your business. I serve on a ton of HACCP teams, and if you want to put me on your HACCP team, you go right ahead. I don't charge for that because I know who you'll call when things go wrong. Okay, so by all means, you know, I mean, ping me if you're going to do that. But if you need something, you know, and just to have somebody there or want somebody to, you know, ask questions of, that's the world I work in. That's my job. So, but when you have small companies, it's important to get as many people on the HACCP team that you can and train them and understand what they're doing. There are a couple of people who I think really need to be on the HACCP team. And I really recommend going and reading a book by Michael Gerber, and it's called The E-Myth Revisited. And I have posted it in previous videos, but I'll post it again. And the idea is that when you are setting up your business, set it up with all the different jobs. All right, you may be filling all of those different jobs. I mean, I'm the CEO of a small food safety consulting company. I am the chief cook and bottle washer. I send the invoices, I open the mail, I clean the bathroom, I do the sales calls. That's what we do. But I have a organizational chart that has all of those different jobs in it. Okay, identify who's going to be on the food safety team from that org chart. If you need help or like writing an org chart, there are some really good tools in Microsoft PowerPoint. You can do a hierarchical relationship, and it takes 20 minutes to get a really robust org chart together in what used to take like hours because of formatting. So we take that organization chart and we ask ourselves who needs to be on that food safety team. Okay, and Vanessa, the book is Michael Gerber is the author, Gerber, and it's the E-Myth Revisited. All right, and it's a whole, I mean, there are like a whole series of books, but you just need the original, and you can probably get it at the library. I'm cheap. I get books at the library. I love my library. So who should be on that food safety team? Well, if it's a small business, the owner-operator, because you're the one that has all your fingers in the pie, and you should have all your fingers in the pie. Then my next favorite person to be on the food safety team is the person who does the shipping and receiving, because they are your eyes and ears of the plant. They know what's coming in and they know what's going out. And for most of us, our operations live and die on how we are on our raw materials. You know, if you get terrible raw materials, you don't have anything to work with. Okay, and you need to know that the person who can stop shipment and keep compromised product from even coming into your facility knows about food safety. Do they have to be completely HACCP trained? No, but they do have to have what we used to call in the service situational awareness. Okay, so that they know what you're doing, and they know what's supposed to be coming in and how to execute what we call an approved supplier program. So so after the owner operator, your shipping and receiving clerk is my favorite person to be on there. Okay, if you have a separate person doing sanitation is incredibly important. Obviously, we live and die by our sanitation, and we have so many things in our HACCP planning that rely on our sanitation SOPs, and so many things that we do when we do a hazard analysis, which is step 6 of the HACCP planning, that rely on sanitation to create the conditions to create safe food. So if you have a separate sanitation person, by all means, that person should be on the HACCP team. Okay, and then the next people I really like to have on the HACCP team, and this is going to seem a little out there, I like to have whoever is doing finance. Okay, because there are real money implications behind HACCP planning and how you do this and how you allocate funds, and your finance person needs to know that, because if something goes wrong, they're going to find out anyway, because recalls are expensive. And then if you at all possible can get somebody from marketing to be conversant in what you're doing. They don't necessarily really need to be on the team, but they need to be conversant enough in what they are doing so that, one, if something goes wrong, they can execute a PR plan that makes sense and that protects you out in the marketplace. And they can also then, as they are out there doing marketing and sales, they can use the documentation that you create from your HACCP plan, like a specification, which we're going to be talking about in upcoming office hours in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so that they can accurately communicate what it is that you create when you create something. All right. And those people give you a broad spectrum of who needs to be on your HACCP team. Okay, you can bring me in. There are other people who are experts in one thing or another that you can bring in for projects or things like that. But that should be the core. The core should be your fully functional team. Okay, and then when we bring that HACCP team together to write our HACCP plan, the first thing that we do is we name our HACCP team. Okay, and so the what's this, the paper I have behind me is basically what that documentation looks like. So get yourself out a Microsoft Word document, like maybe your letterhead, okay, which should have your name and address and that stuff on it. And then you write things in, all right? And so here we go. So we're going to start this, and we are going to we're going to make up our ABC Meats company. All right. So we are ABC Meats, Main Street, Anywhere, USA. All right. All right, and then the first name that we're going to put on here is we're going to put down the name of the owner. And since Andre is talking to me, Andre, I'm naming you owner of the company. ANDREIB. Okay, and he's the CEO and owner. All right. So we name and we job, okay? Because, if you guys do end up selling your HACCP plan, or selling your company, your HACCP plan is part of the documentation that goes with you, and whoever's buying you out is going to have to update all of this sort of stuff. So then we put down the training. All right, if we are naming you, Andre, and I will get to your question in just a second, if we are naming you as and you're the owner, you are going to be the HACCP coordinator or the food safety practitioner, FSP, okay? And if you are that person, you need to have IHA, International HACCP Alliance training. Now, in meat and poultry. Now, here's the deal. The way that reads in the CFR is that you do not have to have the IHA meat and poultry HACCP training, but you must have training that is recognized by our friends at the USDA. Here, I'm just going to move all this stuff forward so that you can see it a little better. You have to have training that is recognized by the USDA. This is the only training that they recognize. Okay, and there are multiple different ways of getting this training. I have an online course, which I can send you info about. Cooperative Extension usually does this course about once a year. It's an in-person class. It generally takes 2 days. All right, so somebody somewhere in your plant on your HACCP team has to have this training and the on the certification, and you got to have that certification with a little gold seal. So that has to be somewhere. All right, now, if you are working multiple shifts, I will tell you that this training, somebody with this training must be on every shift, which makes things a little more complicated, but it's still totally doable. All right, so that's the CEO and owner. All right, then let's see here. Vanessa, you get to be sanitation supervisor. Okay, and for somebody who is doing sanitation, all right, in my estimation, sanitation is important enough that they should also be HACCP trained, okay, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this HACCP training, all right, HACCP trained, all right, and then we have this thing called sanitation control procedures, SCP, which is a training I'm going to start offering. It has more to do with the FDA, but the USDA still recognizes it. You asked a great question, Vanessa. This IHA training is once for the rest of your life. And what's interesting is it's good for the rest of your life, but the information really, really changes. So, but that's one of the reasons I'm doing these office hours, because it seems silly to have somebody commit to doing a whole another 16-hour course when they've already done it, when what they really need is the updated information. So that's why we do office hours in some reasons. Okay, so Carrie, oh, it was your first job in the meat room on sanitation. That's awesome. All right, but I'm assigning you, Carrie, to shipping and receiving, because this is truly the important important job besides the person who actually like puts their hands on the food. All right, so this shipping and receiving person, all right, needs to be trained on mostly needs to be trained on what we call good manufacturing practices. All right, there are a ton of good manufacturing practices trainings out there. A lot of them are very good. I think Cornell just put a new one up on as an online course. I'll go look for that. I think it has more to do with the FDA 117, but good manufacturing practices are good manufacturing practices. You know, you clean up after yourself and that sort of thing. Keep cold things cold. We're a big believer in that. All right. And so then so that's exactly what you do. That is the documentation of your food safety team. Now, what you need to be able to do, especially under USDA production or third-party audits, is that if you have these trainings that you say these people have them in their personnel file, I need, as an auditor or a USDA inspector, to go find these pieces of paper. And I highly recommend every year when you do your HACCP reassessment, you go find these pieces of paper and make sure they're still in there, because everybody knows what happens with personnel files. You know, you move offices, you move buildings, you move the filing cabinet, for heaven's sake. Somebody takes the personnel file out and doesn't put it back. Okay, so once a year when you're revalidating your HACCP plan as USDA requires, go back and find all of these pieces of paper and make sure these people are getting retrained. I will also say that in terms of all these other kinds of trainings besides the IHA HACCP, every single company that I work with does updated GMP training yearly because it is that important. Most people do this by going through their GMPs with the employees. So they say, okay, here's our sanitation, here's our receiving and storage, here's our whatever, and they train them on their SOPs. That could be a great time to rewrite your SOPs and say, hey, is this really how we do it here? And if it's not, we go back and we make sure it is how we do it here. Okay, so that really truly is the first step of HACCP. And if you do this, you will be like light years ahead of half the people writing HACCP plans out there. And I also want to say that having, you don't just have to put this information down. Having contact information can be really incredibly helpful. That's how I do it when I'm doing it with clients, because if a recall happens, you don't want to be looking for that contact information. You're going to call somebody on their cell phone. Yeah, time's wasted if you are looking for that. So I would put contact information like names and emails and things like that. When we put that stuff together, I would not put my frontline supervisor on my HACCP team, my implant inspector on my HACCP team. I would, however, have that contact information readily available to me. Okay. All right. Let me go read Andre's question here. Books and recipes that violate obvious safety regulations. Yes, I wouldn't know anything about that. These are, so here's how this works. And I'm actually, going into this, I did not come into this from the front of the house or the back of the house. I did not come into food safety from restaurants. And a lot of folks do. Recipe books, cookbooks, even the ones that you get at Culinary Institute are not third-party reviewed for food safety. Now, if there's a cookbook author out there that would like me to provide that service, I would be absolutely happy to. And I think it would be really neat to put together, oh, hey, this is a good project. What if we put together like a salt-cured pig cookbook with the HACCP plans that go in it? Ooh, I'm going to have to talk to the admins about that. Okay, so those cookbooks that you buy, written by delightful, well-intentioned people trying to get good information out there, are not generally vetted for food safety, because that's really hard, and there are not a whole lot of people, doing that. So if you want to take a recipe that you have gotten from one of the charcuterie books, I would, first of all, you're going to have a problem with scale. Those are all home recipes, all right? And so step one is to scale it up to restaurant like size. Now, I know there are people that can help you do that. I imagine if you need that service and you get in touch with me, I can find somebody. That is not me. And so that's the first question. Okay, and then I would take a step back, all right, and ask yourself, what am I making here? Okay, and believe it or not, we're going to cover that next week when we talk about our intended use or our intended consumer and what our products are. All right, so when you have a recipe, then you say, all right, well, what am I making? Is it a ready-to-eat food? Is it not ready-to-eat food? Is it a pork product? Is it a poultry product? Whatever it is that you're making. And once you start answering those questions, you can start determining the food safety needs based on the recipe. But there isn't anything out there that I know of where you have vetted recipes and the HACCP plan that goes behind it. We did do that at Pigstock for a couple of years when Cherry Capital was running Pigstock. Brian would post a recipe and I would do HACCP by interior decorating right next to him. And I had for those of you who've been at them, I have, 24 of these lining the room of the ballroom at the hotel. And that's how we do it. So that's what I would say. And I will talk to the admins about getting some recipes and some HACCP plans together, because that's a neat idea. And you're right, Vanessa, there is this really huge question of liability. And I will tell you that, even as somebody who writes HACCP plans for a living, there are my HACCP plans that exist out on the internet that people are giving away. But any HACCP plan that you download is going to get you about 50% of the way there. All right, because they're all facility and process specific, and I mean incredibly facility and process specific. And so the University of Wisconsin meat and poultry HACCP plans are a fabulous place to start. I mean, there are times when I start there, and I've been doing this for a really long time. So I don't want to discourage anybody from going out to the internet and getting HACCP plans. That's why I put all of those fisheries HACCP plans in the documents the other day, because that's those are really incredibly valuable if you're going into fisheries value-added production. And so so getting stuff is a great place to start. And often when I run my HACCP class, people start with, there are not that many out on the internet. And people send them to me, and I pick them apart because they really will only get you 50% of the way there. And that's why, people declaim liability on it. If we do so when I teach the HACCP class, I send you this HACCP book, and those are all training models. And so if we did a recipe book, it would be training models for HACCP, not actual, like take this, photocopy it and put it into production, because that would never fly anyway, whether it was for USDA HACCP or for doing like food code HACCP and trying to do this in your retail environment. So, okay, great. So we are 5 minutes before the close of office hours today, and there are a couple of questions that I have. Joseph is asking, is ServSafe a valuable training for wholesale? ServSafe is a great place to start, but ServSafe is by and large around serving hot foods hot, cold foods cold, making sure that you're keeping your hands clean and things like that. I would also posit that given some of the things that have happened in restaurants, even here in Portland, that ServSafe does not do enough around allergen control, cross-contamination. We've had restaurants go out of business because of cross-contamination issues. And it's a great place to start, and it's a great place to start learning the language of food safety, but it is insufficient for wholesale. And I would also say that if you're doing manufacturing at retail, like you have a charcuterie program and you have a curing chamber in your restaurant, ServSafe is not going to get you where you need to be, because it only talks about HACCP. It doesn't actually teach you how to write a HACCP plan, right? At retail, you do not. If you are doing this, and I want to point this out, if you're doing this at retail, the food code does not require the International HACCP Alliance training curriculum, because it can't, just because of random ways that the food code is written. But that being said, when you're doing this sort of stuff at retail, your retail food code will tell you all your CCPs, all that good sort of stuff, and it will not tell you to do HACCP as a 12-step program. It won't say, write out your food safety team, write out your product, write out your consumer, because that's not how we do food code HACCP. This is how we do USDA and Codex HACCP. It's still a surpassingly good idea. Okay, even if it's not regulatorily required. All right, so that's what I got on. ServSafe. Okay, well, we're reaching the bottom of the hour. I'm happy to continue to take questions. I don't know if we're going to have any more questions. It's been delightful having you here on this rainy, cold afternoon. I'm wicked excited because I'm going to Iceland for the weekend. So if anybody wants to give me tips on where to go in Reykjavik to take my 10-year-old son out to dinner, I'd be really excited. But other than that, if there are not any more questions, I will post this as a recording. I will put in the Michael Gerber book in the notes so that everybody can go get it. If you run a business of any size, like USDA Meats or whatever, I highly recommend that book. It's really pretty amazing and really good information, and also will really help you organize your HACCP planning, because it's all about doing planning for your business. So anyway, all right, well, great. It doesn't look like there are any more questions. Of course, I'm always available over the page or the comment section on this. Again, I'm Dr. Michelle Fanninsteel from Dirigo Food Safety, and I'm your food safety admin here on the Salt Cured Pig. Tell everybody you know about the Salt Cured Pig and tell them to come join us, because we're like 500 people away from the 20,000 member mark, which is really cool. All right, everybody have a great afternoon. You've been a delightful audience. It's my pleasure to serve you, and come ask us questions on the page. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon.